The midday sun bounced off my dusty old sedan as I parked in front of MedPlus Estate, ready to visit my elderly mom. She had sweet neighbors. Well, most of them. Lurking behind her rose-lined hedges was Karen Jenner, HOA tyrant and queen of petty fines. While I was inside checking on Mom, I heard a deep rumble outside. Harley Davidson? Nope. Tow truck, hooked to my car. By the time I made it to the curb, my sedan was gone, snatched like I'd left it in a fire lane. But Karen had no clue who she'd just messed with. See, I'm a retired sheriff and my old buddies on the force, they still answer my calls. What started as a bogus tow turned into an HOA scandal so big, Karen might need witness protection just to step outside. And trust me, that was only the beginning. Stick around, because when I dug deeper, I found skeletons in Karen's closet that even she didn't know were there. Before we jump headfirst into this wild story, do me a favor. Drop a comment below telling me where you live, and if you've ever faced an HOA nightmare of your own. Seriously. Your support helps this budding channel grow, and you might even inspire others who are stuck dealing with a real-life Karen. Ready? Fasten your seatbelts. This ride's about to get bumpy. When I first heard the roar of that tow truck outside Mom's house, my heart did a jumping jack. I leaped from Mom's living room sofa, nearly spilling her cup of chamomile tea. Mom was dozing off in her recliner, half listening to old Western tunes, so she had no clue about the commotion outside. I stumbled over to the window, yanking back the curtain. That's when I saw my car, my dependable old sedan nicknamed Rusty Ruby for its faded red paint, already perched on the tow truck's lift. A scrawny driver wearing a bright orange vest was cranking the chain. My jaw dropped. The only thing I could do was dash out the front door, flailing my arms like a man trying to stop a stampede. "Hey, that's my car!" I hollered, running barefoot across the driveway. "Put it down!" The tow truck driver met my eyes with a bored shrug, then pointed across the street. And that's when I spotted her, Karen Jenner herself. She stood there wearing a tight-lipped grin, arms folded, as if she were the mighty ruler of the block. Her short, perfectly styled hair didn't budge in the breeze, and she clutched a clipboard like it was an ancient scepter of ultimate power. "This vehicle is parked illegally," she announced in a voice that reminded me of nails on a chalkboard. MedPlus Estate has strict rules about visitor parking. I blinked at her. Illegally? This is a public road. I've been parking here for months whenever I visit my mom. No one's complained. Karen snorted. Well, you must have missed the new regulations. As president of the HOA, I'm authorized to ensure that every car follows the guidelines. And your poor Rusty Ruby, well, she's in violation. Very sorry. She didn't sound sorry at all. She sounded delighted. Like a kid on Christmas morning with a new toy. My blood pressure skyrocketed, but I tried to keep cool. "Ma'am," I started, forcing my voice to stay calm, "I'm Michael Stewart. I'm here to look after my elderly mother who—" She raised a manicured hand in the universal talk-to-the-hand gesture. "Enough excuses. We have signs posted at each entrance. If you can't bother to follow the rules, you can pay the consequences." Before I could protest further, the tow truck roared to life. In less than a minute, my poor car was gone, out of sight. My heart pounded with frustration. I glared at Karen. "If you think you can just do that without me fighting back, you're seriously mistaken." She flashed me a condescending smirk, as if she'd swallowed a whole lemon but found it tasty. "Good luck fighting City Hall, sir. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to attend." She turned on her heel, marched back to a shiny SUV, and drove off in a swirl of perfume and attitude. I stood there in my socks on the sidewalk, feeling about as useful as a broken traffic light, and watched her vanish around the corner. I wanted to scream at the sky. Instead, I trudged back into Mom's house, shaking with anger and embarrassment. My mom, sweet as ever, tried to calm me down, thinking maybe there was a misunderstanding. But I knew the truth. Karen was on a power trip. And I'd been her latest victim. The moment I realized who I used to be, who I still had connections to, my frustration turned into a wicked little plan. Oh, Karen had no clue. I picked up my phone and dialed an old buddy from the sheriff's department, a man named Carl. We'd served together for years before I retired. Carl still worked in dispatch, though he had enough rank to pull strings. "Carl," I said, trying not to sound too giddy, "I need a favor. There's this HOA president going nuts in my mom's neighborhood, and she just had my car towed under questionable circumstances. Think you can help me look into her record and see if there's anything we can do?" Carl let out a short laugh. "Michael, you always find the strangest trouble. Sure, give me the details." I smiled, my mood lifting. Karen thought she was unstoppable. Wait till she saw what it's like to cross a retired sheriff with friends still on the force. I handed Carl the information, including the name Karen Jenner and the location MedPlus Estate. He said he'd call me back once he had anything interesting. Mom worried about my stress levels, so I tried to act calm for her sake, but inside I felt like a volcano about to explode. I stayed with her the rest of the afternoon, cooking her a light dinner and helping her sort through mail. All the while, I was quietly hatching my plan to confront Karen's tyranny, and that was just the beginning. I woke up the next morning on Mom's lumpy old couch, my back creaking like a haunted door. My mind was still on last night's fiasco. The tow yard had emailed me an invoice for the unauthorized vehicle removal, demanding a not-so-small fee. My stomach twisted in knots. Not only had I lost my car overnight, but now I had to pay a ransom just to get it back. Over a breakfast of scrambled eggs, I decided to see if I could reason with Karen before going full nuclear. Maybe I'd catch her in a good mood. Ha, what a joke. But hey, I had to try. I rummaged through Mom's phone book, she still keeps a paper one, to see if Karen's contact number was listed under the HOA details. Sure enough, I found President Karen J. with an official HOA extension. I dialed. After 5 rings, I heard a voice dripping with fake pleasantness. "MedPlus Estate HOA office, this is Karen speaking. How may I help you?" I drew in a breath. "Hello, Karen. This is Michael Stewart, the man you had towed last night." There was a slight pause. "Oh, yes, I remember." No apology, no warmth, just an annoyed tone. "I was hoping we could talk this through. My mother's old, she needs me around. I park on the street because her driveway's too narrow." Karen cut me off. "Well, that's quite unfortunate, but you should have read the updated HOA policy emailed out 3 weeks ago. We have designated parking spots for visitors in the central lot, not on the street. I'm sure you understand." I gritted my teeth, trying not to snap. "My mom never got that email." Another bored sigh from her end. "Everyone got it. Maybe check her spam folder. Now, is that all, Mr. Stewart? I have real issues to handle." That was it. My last shred of patience crumbled. "Karen, you messed with the wrong guy. I suggest you reverse the tow fees, or we'll end up dealing with more than an HOA meeting." Karen let out a forced laugh, the kind that says, "I'm not actually laughing." "Threats won't get you anywhere, dear. Now, if you'll excuse me." And the line went dead. I slammed Mom's phone down so hard she nearly dropped her mug of coffee. My face felt hot, my hands shook. I never wanted to intimidate or scare someone, but Karen's snobbish attitude was lighting a fuse I'd kept dormant for a long time. She didn't know who she was messing with, or the resources I still had. I exhaled, trying to calm myself. Then I pulled out my cell phone and dialed Carl. After 2 rings, he picked up. "Michael," he said, sounding upbeat, "you won't believe this. That HOA lady, she's been involved in some questionable activity. We got a bunch of calls about her from other residents. There's a pattern of towing, random fines, even alleged forging of signatures on certain HOA documents. Nothing proven yet, but she's on thin ice." A spark of excitement flickered in my chest. "Interesting. Think we can open an investigation?" Carl hesitated. "We need a formal complaint, but if someone who's been personally affected steps forward with evidence, then yes, we can dig deeper." I knew exactly what I had to do. Gather enough evidence to hang Karen with her own rules. Maybe she'd towed more cars illegally. Maybe she harassed other visitors. The wheels in my mind started turning. Right then, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Your car's racking up storage fees in the tow yard. Don't delay." Perfect. That meant every day I waited was another chunk of money down the drain. Karen was racking up the pain points, but I had a plan. I hopped in a taxi to fetch my car from the tow yard, paid the outrageous fee, and drove back to Mom's place. But I didn't park on the street this time. Instead, I squeezed into Mom's driveway like a contortionist, leaving barely an inch to spare on either side. If Karen wanted to claim street parking was illegal, I'd keep my car off her precious asphalt. Let her stew on that. Mom worried about me confronting Karen, but I promised I'd be careful. Still, I couldn't let her keep bullying the neighborhood. It wasn't just about me. I suspected a lot of folks were too scared to fight back. Well, they just got a new champion. Later that evening, I decided to take a stroll around MedPlus Estate, partly to cool off and partly to see if I could bump into neighbors who'd also faced Karen's wrath. Mom's block was lined with old oak trees and well-lit sidewalks. I passed manicured yards, each with a sign proudly declaring, "We love MedPlus Estate." I soon spotted a man fiddling with the lock on his gate. He had the haggard expression of someone who'd just had a run-in with trouble. "Evening," I said, smiling politely. "I'm Michael, visiting my mom. You live here long?" He looked up, startled. "Oh, hey, I'm Travis. I've been here about 2 years. Sorry, I'm a bit rattled. I just got a notice from the HOA saying my fence is too tall and unsafe. They're fining me $300 a day until I tear it down." My brows shot up. "That's intense. Are there guidelines saying your fence is too tall?" Travis rolled his eyes. "No, I checked. Mine meets the standard, but Karen insisted it blocks the view. She claims she can do random inspections and demand immediate changes. She threatened to tow my wife's car if we didn't comply. It's insane." I stiffened, a surge of anger flaring. So it wasn't just me. "Listen, Karen towed my car yesterday for supposedly parking illegally. I'm actually a retired sheriff. I'm looking into whether she's stepping outside her authority. Sounds like she might be." Travis let out a long breath of relief. "Retired sheriff, huh? We sure could use someone who knows the law. A bunch of folks are fed up with her, but the HOA can be powerful. We're afraid of losing more money or being forced to move." I patted his shoulder. "Don't worry. Keep any written notices or emails she sends you. That's evidence. If enough people are willing to speak up, we can form a case and show the local authorities that Karen's abusing her power." He nodded eagerly. "Count me in. My wife will be thrilled we're not alone." Buoyed by that conversation, I kept walking. Along the way, I met a few other residents, each with their own Karen horror story. One older couple, the Davises, had their mailbox replaced because Karen decided the color wasn't consistent. They were billed hundreds of dollars for the new one. Another family had their kids' bikes confiscated for violating the aesthetic, even though no official rule stated that. The more people I talked to, the more I realized Karen had turned this place into a personal fiefdom. By the time I returned to Mom's porch, arms loaded with scribbled notes and phone numbers, I had a sense of purpose. Karen wasn't just petty, she was systematically using HOA rules to drain people's wallets and feed her ego. Enough was enough. The next day, armed with my growing folder of testimonies and pictures, I decided to confront Karen in person at the HOA office. After all, it was the official spot for community issues, right? That's what the website claimed. So I drove downtown to a small strip mall. Tucked between a nail salon and a bakery was a tiny suite labeled MedPlus Estate HOA, office hours 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Perfect. The moment I walked inside, I realized it wasn't your standard cozy neighborhood office. Instead, it looked like Karen had tried to replicate a government building from an apocalypse movie. The walls were a stark white, the lighting painfully bright, and posters of rules and regulations plastered every square foot. A man sat hunched at a desk in the corner, flipping through a thick binder that probably contained the dreaded HOA bylaws. "Hi," I greeted. "Is Karen in?" He glanced up, eyes dull with despair. "Yeah, she's back there." He jabbed a thumb at a door marked President's Office. I rapped on the door twice. A muffled voice said, "Come in." My stomach churned as I turned the handle. The office was surprisingly large, with a glossy desk and shelves lined with binders, each labeled with months and years. Karen sat behind that desk, wearing a pair of reading glasses perched low on her nose. "Oh, it's you," she said flatly, removing her glasses. "Are you here to pay more fees?" I placed my folder on the desk. "Actually, I'm here to ask you to stop your harassment of the people in MedPlus Estate. I've spoken with multiple residents, and we all have a big problem with your approach." Karen eyed the folder with disdain. "That's adorable, Michael. You've gathered a fan club. Well, guess what? The HOA bylaws give me authority to maintain standards. If some people can't follow them, that's their problem." I shook my head. "I believe you're abusing that authority. We have evidence of you towing vehicles without just cause, issuing fines not listed in the official guidelines, forging documents." Suddenly her expression twisted into alarm. "Forging? That's nonsense. You can't prove that." She let out a forced laugh. "I'd be careful with accusations like that, or I'll slap you with a defamation lawsuit so fast your head will spin." I smirked, not intimidated. "Go right ahead. but I suspect the local police might want to see the complaints I have. Several folks are ready to come forward, not just me." Karen leaned in, lowering her voice. "You think the police scare me? I know people in city council, honey. This estate has made the city plenty of money in taxes. I can have your claims dismissed with a single phone call." A flash of doubt crept into my mind. Could she really pull strings like that? I remembered Carl's words, "We need a formal complaint." Maybe Karen did have connections, but I'd faced bigger bullies than her in my time on the force. We locked eyes, tension so thick you could slice it with a kitchen knife. Then, out of nowhere, a phone rang on Karen's desk. She frowned, glancing at the screen. "I have to take this," she hissed. "We're done here. You should leave before I call security." I took a step back, arms crossed. "You haven't heard the last of this." Karen grabbed the phone and snapped, "Yes, hello," as I turned and left her office. I closed the door behind me, my heart thudding like a bass drum. But I had no idea how weird things were about to get. That same afternoon, I was busy finishing up some chores for Mom when I noticed an unfamiliar SUV idling across the street. Normally, I wouldn't think much of it, but something about the tinted windows and the way the vehicle kept creeping forward made the hairs on my neck stand up. Finally, it sped off as soon as I stepped outside. Later, as I ran to pick up groceries, I saw the same SUV in the store parking lot, parked 2 rows away. Was I being paranoid? Or was someone following me? My gut told me Karen might be behind it. Maybe she was trying to intimidate me. If so, it wasn't working. I'd faced criminals who tried worse. But it did rattle me enough to phone Carl. "That's suspicious," Carl agreed. "If she's got connections, she might have hired some local guys to trail you. Keep your eyes open, Michael." It wasn't just about petty fines. Karen might be crossing into serious territory. I vowed not to let intimidation scare me off. Despite the creepy SUV, I pressed on with my mission. I spent hours collecting statements from folks around MedPlus Estate. Travis took photos of the fence fiasco. The Davises found proof that the mailbox Karen replaced had been well within regulations. Another neighbor showed me an email from Karen that strongly hinted she was pocketing some of the fine money for herself. The puzzle pieces were forming a picture of corruption. One evening, I gathered everyone in Mom's spacious living room for a little HOA rescue meeting. About 10 people showed up bringing snacks and stacks of documents. We spread them out on the coffee table while Mom fussed over everyone, making sure they had enough lemonade. A feeling of unity surged. We weren't alone in this fight. Travis cleared his throat. "So, how do we proceed? Are we going to sue Karen, complain to the city?" I nodded. "We'll file a formal complaint with the local police. My friend Carl can help route it. If that fails, we go to the media or a local consumer rights advocate. Nothing upsets an HOA tyrant more than bad publicity. But we need to be systematic. Let's compile everything in a single folder." They all seemed relieved to have a plan. We spent hours sorting documents by type, towing, random fines, property violations, suspicious finances. Each story was more outrageous than the last, like a soap opera starring a dictatorial neighbor who wanted total control. By the time we finished, we had enough paper to fill a filing cabinet. We planned to visit the precinct with all our evidence, but that's when twist number 2 showed up like an unwanted wedding crasher. It was just after 10 p.m. and the meeting was wrapping up. Suddenly, a loud pounding rattled the front door. My heart jumped. Everyone went silent. I stood, motioning for them to stay put. When I opened the door, I found 2 uniformed men with stern expressions, but they weren't from the sheriff's department. The patches on their sleeves read, "Private Security, MedPlus Estate." One of them, a tall man with a shaved head, folded his arms. "We got a report of a suspicious gathering, noise complaint. You folks mind explaining what's going on?" I scowled. "Noise complaint? We're just having a quiet meeting. No loud music, no yelling. And you guys have no authority here. This is private property owned by my mom." The other guard shrugged, a sneer crossing his face. "Rules say we can investigate any disturbance in the estate. That includes your mother's house." I stepped in front of him, chest tight. "You aren't stepping foot inside without a warrant or a real cop. Understand?" He smirked. "You want to escalate this, buddy? We can call the local PD. I'm sure Miss Karen Jenner would love to see what's going on behind these doors." I couldn't believe it. Karen was dispatching her own personal security squad to harass us. People in the living room started whispering, fear creeping in. I took a deep breath. reminding myself to keep calm. "You do that," I said, crossing my arms. "Call the police. In fact, I'll do it for you." I whipped out my cell phone. The two guards seemed taken aback, exchanging glances. Finally, the tall one cleared his throat. "Look, we're just doing our jobs. Next time, keep it down or get a permit to gather." He turned and stalked off. The other guard followed, muttering something about how Karen won't like this. I slammed the door, anger boiling. This was insane. Karen was clearly stepping up her intimidation tactics, sending security to crash a harmless homeowner meeting. We all exchanged uneasy looks. If Karen could deploy muscle so easily, what would she do next? But ironically, the incident only made everyone more determined to stand up to her. We finished compiling our evidence. Enough was enough. The next morning, bright and early, a convoy of us, Travis, the Davises, and me, headed to the local police station. Mom insisted on coming along to see justice done, but her knee was acting up. I convinced her to stay home and rest. We walked into the station's lobby with our stack of files. I approached the main counter. "We'd like to file a formal complaint against the MedPlus Estate HOA president, Miss Karen Jenner," I said, voice steady. The desk officer glanced at the pile of paperwork. "That's a lot of material. You folks sure about this?" "Oh, we're sure," Travis said. "We have all the evidence right here." I recognized a younger officer in the corner, Officer Simmons. I'd helped train him back in the day. He gave me a subtle nod, then approached. "Mr. Stewart, good to see you. If you'll follow me, we can go to the back and sort this out." He led us to a small conference room. Over the next hour, we laid it all out, towing receipts, photos of the mailbox fiasco, questionable emails with Karen's signature. Officer Simmons typed furiously, creating a thorough report. By the end, he looked almost overwhelmed. "Well," he said, "this is a lot. We'll definitely open an investigation. She may have overstepped the HOA's authority, possibly even broken some laws about trespass and theft." Travis fist-pumped quietly. The Davises let out sighs of relief. Me, I just felt a sense of grim satisfaction. I'd been in law enforcement enough to know that filing a complaint wasn't a silver bullet. But it was a start. Right as we were about to leave, my phone buzzed. It was Carl. "Michael," he said, "we've found something big. Karen's been funneling fines into a personal account, not the HOA's official bank. We traced it through some records we seized from an unrelated case. She's in deep trouble." My jaw dropped. "Serious?" "Dead serious," Carl replied. "We're getting a warrant to search her office." That was the second high-tension twist. Not only was Karen harassing neighbors, she might have been stealing money from the entire community. I relayed the news to the group, who looked both shocked and ecstatic. It was the kind of scandal that could bring Karen's empire crashing down overnight. As we stepped out of the station, I couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of Karen's reaction when the cops showed up with a warrant in hand. She'd probably try to wave her fancy connections around, but this time we had real evidence. She couldn't just slip away. The showdown came a couple days later. Carl tipped me off that the police were heading to the MedPlus Estate HOA office with a search warrant. A bunch of residents, including me, gathered at a safe distance, pretending to stroll or jog around the area so we could witness the moment. Sure enough, a police cruiser and an unmarked car pulled up in front of the suite. Officer Simmons and two other officers stepped out, walked right up to the door, and demanded entry. At first, Karen tried to block them. We could see her through the glass door, arms flailing, face red as a tomato. Then one officer flashed the warrant, and Karen's posture collapsed. She was forced to let them in. We watched through the tinted windows as they rummaged through her file cabinets and computer. Occasionally, we'd see her pointing and yelling, probably cursing our names. After about half an hour, the officers emerged with several boxes of documents. Karen stumbled behind them, looking pale. She tried to maintain her dignity, but ended up tripping on the curb and nearly face-planting. A few people in the crowd stifled laughter. I admit I felt a little bad for her, just a little. One by one, neighbors started applauding. Someone shouted, "Finally, justice!" Karen glared at us, mouth pressed into a furious line. Then, when she saw me, she spat, You caused all this!" I lifted my hands in mock innocence. "Ma'am, it's your own wrongdoing that caused this." Then, in a gentler tone, "Maybe now you'll learn that you can't just bully people and break the law." She snarled something I couldn't hear. The officers insisted she step aside while they locked up the office. From what I gathered, Karen wasn't arrested on the spot, but she was definitely in trouble. The best she could hope for was a lengthy legal battle. The worst? She'd be facing criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. In the days that followed, the entire MedPlus estate was buzzing about Karen's downfall. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, where half the neighborhood showed up to demand her removal. She arrived with a half-hearted attempt to spin the story, blaming clerical errors and miscommunication. But no one bought it. The board voted unanimously to remove her from the presidency. Travis told me later that Karen attempted to sue them, but that fizzled out when more evidence of her shady finances emerged. Meanwhile, I reconnected with my old law enforcement pals who got a kick out of the Karen fiasco. They joked that I should hang a sign on my car that reads, "Retired Sheriff, proceed with caution." Mom was relieved the chaos died down and her neighbors started thanking me for stepping up. Some even brought me homemade pies as tokens of gratitude. That ominous SUV that had followed me around disappeared. I guess whoever Karen hired realized their paycheck was about to vanish along with her position.